Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, First Contact. Yeah, not the movie. This is the episode. Bebe Neuwirth is there. We're going to talk a lot about her. I'm sure you're thinking a lot about her. First Contact on It's All Been Checked Before. Speaking of First Contact, this might be your first contact. Hopefully not, but It's All Been Done Radio Hour. Back live on stage this weekend. And this weekend, it's got a big universe journey. I don't know if you've heard us talk about universe journey before. Kind of a Star Trek thing going on there. Anyway, big story this weekend. It's at the Red Herring Theater. Get tickets, ticket info, iabdpresents.com. And here on IABTV, this is First Contact. On It's All Been Checked.
Welcome to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. Your hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. So we're here to talk about First Contact, which I kind of badmouthed a little bit last week just from vague memories of it. But upon watching it, my first impression has changed. It's pretty positive. What about you guys? What are your first impressions?
Same. I had that nagging feeling before. I was like, did Jimmy say this was going to be bad? And I just enjoyed most of it, I think. So
yeah, it's been a weird week for me. So I had the same issue. Like, I thought we talked about this episode really sucking, or not really sucking, just not being that great.
Yeah.
And there could be some arguments about that, but I enjoyed it. It was weird. I got to the end of this episode and I did my research or whatever, and obviously not enough of it is, but, and then I was like, oh wait, how did I feel about this episode? And I did enjoy it. It feels very of its time. I mean, the look of it and the guest actors and stuff.
Yeah.
Bebe Neuwirth, though, I'm never going to complain about her of any time. It brings up a lot of things we brought up many times, and this is kind of a good field experiment for it. Just the whole Prime Directive and all that, without ever saying Prime Directive.
They did say Prime Directive.
Oh, did they? Oh.
Yeah.
I had to note it because I think we've argued about this before, or I was corrected, but I could swear I remember Picard always using it in that context of it being about avoiding interference and so on.
Yeah, I was too busy reacting every time they said First Contact.
Yeah, and
completely missed it.
Yeah, I think maybe I was just, as a kid, bored with all the talkie and not a lot of action. And now as an adult, I really appreciate the concept of the Prime Directive and how it applies here. It gives you a lot to think about.
I think one thing I noted at some point during this episode was that I appreciated that we got to see it from this side of it, in the sense of it not being, oh my God, we just stumbled onto this rock and we have to hide. No, oh no. Yeah. We can't do this, but it's like, okay, we're ready to do this. Here's how this would work.
Well, and yeah, it's I'm kind of jumping the gun, if you will. But my thought was that it, and it makes sense that it's evolved in the sense the TOS guys, because and maybe the frontiers that are coming across, because back then it was just like, all right, we're in a new world. Let's beam down. What are we finding? That was their mission, and this Enterprise, it's their mission too. But it sounds like it's obviously in this instance it was very meticulous. I'm trying to remember. Do we find out how long Riker was there?
It seemed like he was there briefly just to rendezvous with people who'd been there for longer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I give them major credit. I actually took very few notes about this episode. I mean, few for me, with less than most. But I noticed that it was a full over 9 minutes into the episode before we saw any of our crew that looked like our crew. I mean, we saw Riker before then, but that first 9 minutes were from the perspective of the planet, which really got you in the mindset of the planet. It felt different. The tone was different. The direction was different. So even though it was not one of our regular directors, Cliff Ball. So by the time Picard and Troy beamed down a little over 9 minutes into the episode, they did feel like aliens to me, even though they're regular characters. And I dug the heck out of that. Yeah. That was such a good setup.
So something about the episode overall that I want to get out of the way is that just something about the feel of the dialogue I really liked. It was just something, it harkened back to TOS for me, something about the way that I guess maybe some of the older actors, they had that kind of style, that delivery, but it was still like a more modern take on it. It didn't feel dated. It just felt like a nice, I can't think of the word. I want to say like meaty or somber, but not like overly. So just had the right kind of gravitas to what was going on.
Yeah. It was substantive.
Yeah.
We start out with the hospital and they make a big deal of like finally revealing that it's Riker in the bed after, you wheel him. But anybody that's the least bit familiar with Next Gen in this day and age probably knew right away it was Riker.
Well,
if you didn't know it was Riker, you might have thought it wasn't Star Trek for a minute. Like, the hospital stuff.
When you're watching on Netflix, sometimes they give you those splash screens of a scene from the episode, and that just right away spoiled it. Just showed me like a shot of Riker in the makeup. I was like, oh, who's this going to be on the bed? Yeah, so that was a little frustrating.
And that beginning scene made me think, is this going to be a 60-minute pilot for a alien planet medical drama, which is more or less my alternate episode. But yeah, it felt like ER, but just a few years before.
I was going to say Grey's Anatomy, but I think ER was probably closer in tone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to see a medical drama set on this planet.
Yeah. In mine, they every week they're amazed that there are people from other planets, because it makes sense as the episode went along. It was like, oh, that's okay, that makes sense. They don't get aliens all the time, but at first as the episode started, I was like, well, of course they have to have treated people from other planets, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe not. But I still like the original idea of every week this alien hospital on maybe it's on an asteroid or a planetoid or whatever. And every week it's like, what is with this guy? He doesn't have fingers. He's got web fingers and blah, blah, blah. He's not even from here. It's crazy.
I think that would have been a great spinoff back in season 2 when Crusher left the show if we'd followed her to Starfleet Medical.
Yeah.
That would have been neat. And then that spinoff got canceled after one season, so they brought her back to the main show.
Speaking of which, again, I'm once again jumping the gun. If you could do that twice in one episode, I'm doing it. The woman who plays Marastia, she auditioned to be Crusher.
Really?
Yeah.
The Marastia Yale, who's the main woman, the science minister, is played by Carolyn Seymour.
Yes.
Who's best known for Mortal Kombat Annihilation. She was also in Congo, Gears of War 2. She has 106, actually in Gears of War 3, Gears of War 5. She has 116 credits.
Yeah.
She did a voice for Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 and the first Knights of the Old Republic.
Sounds like some of those are only voice acting credits, though.
And several other Star Wars video games. She's done a bunch of Star Wars video games.
Yeah.
That would just completely flew by Jimmy, unfortunately.
I heard you. He also plays a different character in 2 episodes of Voyager. And this was her second of 3 appearances on Next Gen as 3 different characters. She was I believe, a Romulan in the episode Contagion, and will be, I assume by the name, another Romulan in the episode Face of the Enemy.
Yeah, this episode and next week's kind of, but especially this one is full of, I don't want to say old timers, but working actors who had well over 100 credits. I think a couple of at least one of the guys in this cast also had several Star Wars voice acting credits.
Well, while we're talking about guest stars, George Coe was the prime minister, the chancellor, the main guy. Best known for Transformers, Dark of the Moon, The Stepford Wives, Kramer versus Kramer. And you should know him as the voice of Woodhouse and Archer.
What?
Until he recently passed away, so he's no longer with us. But he also did Star Wars video games.
You mentioned that at some point, didn't you?
Yes, I did. But this is his only Trek credit. He has a few Star Wars credits.
He was a guest star in a lot of stuff in the 80s. So yeah, to me, he's very familiar. And then to look at his list, it's like, I thought he was in a lot more movies than that. And then Kramer vs. Kramer, obviously, I saw that as a kid too. Yeah.
And the Michael Ensign played Minister Krolla, who was the main antagonist. Yeah. He's best known for the original Ghostbusters, the movie Titanic, War Games. So he's got quite a few credits as well. He does do an episode later of Voyager and an episode of DS9 and an episode of Enterprise. So he's on 4 different Star Treks as 4 different characters.
Seems so familiar, but I can't place why. I think he looks like somebody else that is not him.
He looks like a few people.
He wasn't who I thought he was, but then when I read he was the hotel manager in Ghostbusters, I was like,
oh my, oh wow, he's
that's outrageous. I won't pay it. Well, we'll just put it right back.
No. Yeah, just this is the great. I actually had an alternate opening at the beginning, and this is something your punchline. You can insert whatever of the punching bag directors you have out there these days, but. My alternate opening was the nurse or the other doctor asks, well, what are you? And then Riker just opens his eyes and says, I'm Riker. Sits up and grabs both the doctors by the throat. And
Instead of saying his name's Revis Jakar, he says, "I'm Riker."
Yeah, just I'm Riker. Opening theme.
That opening. I have a couple other notes from the opening. Like you said, because it was like, oh, this is a new show. They do the Casablanca line of all the medical facilities and the galaxy of all the medical facilities they could have taken them to. And then this is the one I really love. I can't remember the prelude exactly, but it's essentially it was like, I want somebody on this 29 hours a day. And I was like, yes.
Did they say that?
Yeah. I was like, somebody got my letter I sent into the past. and
that's awesome. And they were saying years and everything too. They didn't say what the name of the planet is, like planet years.
I was curious when they said 29 hours a day. Do they have any concept of what an hour is to what we think of an hour? It could be different. And also, all of these aliens are speaking perfect English. That seems a little suspicious. I
was going to say that I think that's for the purpose of again. This is more the TOS kind of objective of setting the human audience, the human American audience in a certain place and going, these guys are so much like us. We're identifying with them so hard. Then you bring in the actual human crew so they can go, oh, wait, yeah, now I feel what it feels like to be an alien, that whole thing. Aliens are just like us. What would we do in this position?
I definitely thought that first scene in the hospital reminded me a lot of Star Trek 4 when Chekhov gets taken to the hospital. Yeah. And if we didn't see like the alien hands and facial stuff, the technology and things were very similar to 90s Earth in a lot of ways. And I'm sure that was on purpose. But
I have a Star Trek 4 reference later, but I'm going to hold on to that one. I will not jump the gun on that one.
Okay.
So here's a question for both of you, I suppose, then, from both writing and directing standpoint, then. Do you think that they should have pulled back on how close to human they were, how human sounding, how everything? Or was it like too heavy?
I would have liked it if if they had created an alien language. It makes sense. I can suspend the disbelief when the crew is conversing with aliens that, it's just the universal translator taking care of it, even though their mouth doesn't match. But when you've got this species that's never even met humans that they know of, it felt odd and out of place, though I get why they didn't worry about it for accessibility purposes to the audience.
That hadn't even occurred to me. It was like they should have done like at least the Hunt for Red October thing.
Yeah.
They start off and then just like, we're actually speaking.
Yeah. The fact that Star Trek has already had aliens speaking alien languages makes it more glaring when they don't.
I think they made it now. They probably would speak.
Yeah, Discovery, they'd be speaking something else.
Yeah.
Riker is not great at playing everything off as genetic defects. And, that phaser is just a toy for a neighbor's child.
I thought he did. It wasn't, there's not much he could do. They had him dead to rights in a lot of ways, but I thought he was still keeping it pretty cool. And they weren't sure.
I thought he started strong and then faded with each successive. Well, what about this?
My doctor's on a sabbatical. Yeah, you might have been able to read here.
That's the ticket.
Again, perfect of the time.
Yeah, I was looking at the writing of this episode on Memory Alpha, and Stephen, you said you did some research. Did your research include the writing stuff?
I did. No, it did not.
So
I did not do enough.
This was actually derived from a story that Mark Scott Zachary pitched in the 3rd season, and he was having trouble selling a script to Star Trek, and Michael Piller kept telling him, well, just pitch again. And so they bought this because they thought it was a very interesting idea, but then they weren't sure how to make it work. So it has a lot of writing credits on here. It says story by Mark Scott Zachary, but teleplay by Dennis Bailey, David Bischoff, Joe Mensky, Ron D. Moore, Michael Piller. So apparently they gave it to Bailey and Bischoff, who did Tin Man, to do a draft, and they did their version. And they didn't go with that version, so they gave it to Ronald D. Moore and Joe Menosky, who wrote a different version, and they didn't go with their version. So Michael Piller kind of took pieces from the versions and kind of put it together.
Wow.
I mean, at one point, it was going to be Enterprise perspective versus the alien perspective. Mm-hmm. But eventually they just decided to build all new sets and costumes. I mean, the budget on this episode had to be immense, even with the basic technology.
We're gonna have to see the Zack Snyder cut at some point. Then I'm really curious.
I mean, I don't think they filmed all of those different versions.
No.
I think what he's saying is he wants Zack Snyder to film them now.
Oh God, no.
And then
well, I didn't mean that, but yeah. No,
I'm pretty sure we talked about all those writers before, so I won't go over them again.
And I like the direction they chose. I think it makes total sense to go with from their view, because as Keith alluded to earlier, it really makes you feel like, oh yeah, these guys this is how we would probably react. I mean, ideally we'd all react like Marastia, Yale, but we probably wouldn't.
You know, it's
we know a lot of us, the royal us would not.
Yeah.
Oh, so I was looking up Zachary, who originally pitched this thing, and this was his only next gen story by credit, but he has a story by credit for the episode of Deep Space Nine called Far Beyond the Stars, which is a very big departure from their format, set in like 1950s with all the actors playing science fiction writers at a magazine. So I think that's really cool. He also did an episode of Voyager, but I don't recognize World Enough in Time is the name of the episode. I don't know if that is a similarly departed or not, but he wrote a script for Star Trek New Voyages 2. He wrote episodes of Sliders, did a couple episodes of Tech War. So he's big into the sci-fi stuff. And episodes of the Smurfs. So, that's in line with it too.
Yeah, that's pretty deep sci-fi.
Yeah.
I'm a little tongue in cheek, but if you really think about the Smurfs and analyze it, I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Well, is it fantasy or is it sci-fi?
It's fantasy because there's magic.
Yeah. All right. Well, going back to Steven's point about what were you just saying? The thing about the royal we and how we would react and so forth. I also thought of the Men in Black cliche. What was it? A person is smart. People are big, dumb, panicky animals. Mm-hmm. Sort of thing. I think if people could have been approached one-on-one in the manner that the scientist had, or there had to be other scientists, and we see this now today, obviously, just the way people reacted to the recent crises, like a pandemic and so forth. Just if you haven't heard about that,
what it crisis? Was January 6th. It was very orderly. They waited in queue lines. There was no insurrection. That's what a congressman just said on TV last night. So.
I mean, the building's still standing. I mean,
right.
Yeah, all right. I mean,
it was only $30 million in damage and 140 police officers injured.
I couldn't remember the number. I was about to pull up that million number out there.
Any day at the Capitol, right? Yeah. You want to do fashion? I mean, I liked the whole design of everything, but I think my favorite fashion, and the only thing I really noted, were Minister Krolla's glasses. I enjoyed them very much.
Yeah, I thought the rest of it could have been, again, I keep saying LA Law, but it just felt like LA Law to me. I kept thinking I know it's when the episode aired, obviously, but I was like, I feel like it feels like of that quality. It doesn't feel like it's been remastered or anything. So it felt very not sharp. And I felt that way about the fashion. I thought, I didn't dislike it, but I didn't.
I mean, given the number of costumes, the number of alien loafs, the number of sets, this was a huge budget episode.
Yeah.
So we're probably lucky they looked as good as they did.
I'm sorry, did you say alien loafs?
Loafs.
Like a loaf of bread?
That's what the Greatest Jed hosts call whenever there's prosthetics. They call them loafs.
Oh.
That's a good description.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought Bebe's outfit, of course, I enjoyed. So eyewear is what I enjoyed in this episode.
Yeah. And, yes. I kind of liked Troy talked about how they learn about the culture from their journalism, their music, and their pop culture. I was thinking about that. Is that a good way to learn about our culture? Kinda.
Yeah, I mean,
depending upon which channels you're watching and so forth.
I mean, a lot of it might be heightened versions of reality, and I think Troy understands that because she said, we got to come down the ground and see what it really is. But
if you watch Eurovision and then you watch American Idol, are you like, those people aren't from the same place?
I think if you watch those two shows, you know everything you need to know about Earth. Marasta Yale, when she's first introduced to Picard and they bring her up, then they bring her back and she's talking to the Chancellor and she's showing the Chancellor around the ship. Mm-hmm. Man, she's really enjoying being the one in the know and having that one up on the Chancellor and being like, oh yeah, this is Data. He's an android. Like, I learned this morning, but I'm going to know everything now and explain it to you. I kind of enjoyed that though.
Yeah. I guess you probably would be that way. I mean, I think of the Radiohead song where he's like, he'd come back and tell everyone they'd think he was crazy. But
I probably would be like that. Yeah.
Doesn't she say she went to a planetarium? Doesn't she talk about going to that as a kid? Was it her?
I don't remember that.
I think she did.
That's just after the.
It was in 10 Forward, I think.
I just want to hit on this real quick. When Picard and Troy beam down, they're opening 3 or 4 sentences. That's when the door has been shut already for a couple of seconds on the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's like, this is your intro. And I get it. They should be very calming and relaxing, but it was just like, I fell asleep already. You beamed in here. You got me excited. I was like, who are these people? And then you put me to sleep.
Who are these people?
It's a good thing the Jehovah's Witnesses don't have transporters and they have to knock on your door instead of beaming in. Can you imagine you're making dinner and they just beam into your kitchen?
With all the stand your ground laws in this country, that would be terrible.
No, they'd have to be a lot more boring to lose my attention at that point, I think. I'd be like, I think I'd probably better hang on their words for a bit here to see what's going on.
So they're looking for Riker, but the scanners can't find him. Haven't we established the scanners can find a human versus other?
This is, again, those arbitrary scanners, arbitrary lines. Yeah.
Atmosphere, hospital shielding, something. You can throw something out there. I don't know.
But they didn't even try. They're just like, no, we can't find him. Picard brought out the Picard Chateau wine for a special occasion and talked about his brother. I was like, nice callback to the beginning of the season. You say he's been saving it for a special occasion. Yeah, he's been saving it for like 6 months. He's ready to crack that thing open.
Who is it says, but I think it was a good day? Is that Yale?
That was the Prime Minister.
Yale, that's Chancellor Durkin.
That's
later, though.
Or Chancellor, yes.
Yeah, I clearly didn't take notes for a little while. It just made me think he was just dropping some ice cube. I think it was a good day. Messed around and got a triple-double.
I wouldn't have remembered if I hadn't just watched it today, I don't think. Well, I don't know. But, yeah.
The line you mentioned, Stephen, though, it really struck me as well. That was just one of those moments where it's like, yeah, he's really going through something and he's feeling good about it, but he also knows he has this weight of the responsibility and you can see all those wheels turning in his mind. That overall, I think it's a good thing, but this also causes a lot of headache for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think and we'll get into this again later, but I think he's a good guy. There is the scene where he's kind of dressing her down, Yale down. And
yeah.
It just felt like, I don't well, obviously I'm rooting for her. In my mind, I went straight to there's just another man telling a woman.
See, I took it as she's really overstepped her authority.
And I think you're right. And I think he's right. But I initially went there just like, man, this guy's telling a smart woman. And
it took him a second to get there. I can see what you're saying. But I think that eventually, as it progressed, that sentence progressed. Yes, he was being reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he did right by her in the end. He gave her something very valuable.
Yeah, he did.
And letting her leave with the ship, which he very easily could have said no. But he's like, look, she's not going to be happy with the restrictions I'm going to place on her. Right. Let her go live her life. Yeah. And I appreciate that a lot. That's why I don't think he was just talking down to her. I think she really did overstep her authority. And she was making the situation. I mean, yeah, she might have been right that he wouldn't have reacted well to Riker being on there. But as the Chancellor has to make decisions, he deserved to have that information. And they listened to her, and she basically circumvented that chain of command.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I get it.
Since you brought that up, one of my notes was, and this might be a little too long or open-ended, but it's something that should have occurred to me in many other episodes. What I would like to know is what happens to a civilian when they just like, hey, take me with you. And the Enterprise agrees to do it. Do other Starfleet ships do that, or are they integrated into society?
They take them back to Earth and they study whales and they set up a scientific institute.
I was going to say, Keith, it's been done before this podcast even. It's happened. They took
Star Trek 4 is what we're referencing. If you don't know.
The whales kind of tipped me up. I don't remember the specifics, but
yeah.
But I mean, we've had to have seen several examples of them having to take people who needed asylum, people who were stranded, or in this case, which I felt was a little bit more special, where you're taking somebody off of a planet like that and just saying, okay, we agree. Let's go.
So
Does she stay with this ship forever? I mean,
probably not. They probably drop her off at a starbase or a planet. But I would have liked to have seen her as a recurring character. I do think other Trek down the road explores this, because if you think about Voyager, because of where they are, they take on passengers in the first episode that are main characters in the show. Because, you need a guide if you're in space you're not at all familiar with and don't know where you are. So you let that civilian come on board and you make them part of the story. And even in Star Trek Discovery, that's Saru's backstory, the first officer.
I've been thinking about that too. Yeah, that was something where we're starting at a point where we see what happens to him, sort of like at the end.
Yeah.
But for this woman, she's very qualified to probably be a scientist or something. Well, I don't know how she would measure up to future from her perspective standards of technology.
Well,
would she get a job?
Gillian Taylor from Star Trek 4 had a leg up because nobody in the future had studied the whales. So there's novels with her where they've put her in charge of this institute, or at least she's high ranking because she's the only one that has studied this. She's got the expertise. Whereas this scientist, Yale, I do think they'd be interested in grilling her on every aspect of her planet, like the diplomats and stuff that will eventually want to go back for more first contact. But I also think after they do some interviews, she can kind of just follow her passions to learn about whatever she wants. And that's the benefit of living in the moneyless society where you can do what you want to do.
That's another thing I wanted to get at. I mean, do we ever really get to see, I feel like I should know the answer to this question, how people are just living? I mean, how ordinary people are, do they have to buy things? Do they have to sell? What are they just sitting in one of those futuristic high rises somewhere? There's a vineyard. I don't know, obviously,
going into that level of detail, but we do see some people just living their lives from time to time. DS9, we see some people on Earth, like Sisko's dad, just running a restaurant in New Orleans.
Well, and as much as I hate to spoil this sort of thing, but I mean, it's going to be like the first episode, if anybody watches it, is for Picard. I mean, he's running a vineyard.
Yeah.
It seems like there is some day-to-day operation. I mean, are they making money at it? I mean, it seems like he's well off as opposed to one of the other characters in the show. So,
yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like they, and granted, the level of granular detail is not there. I don't think you could just decide to have a mansion. I don't think that's the way their system's set up. Right. But Picard has his family vineyard, and if you're talking about Raffi, the character in Star Trek Picard that's not living so well off, I kind of feel like that a lot of that feels like her choice. So that she wants to be isolated and away from people. So she just lives in a trailer because that's the way she's chosen to live. I think my understanding of it based on novels and everything else is it's moneyless, but there's still got to be some way of determining who gets what house and who gets what apartment. And I'm not sure how that works exactly. But like a restaurant, I think you just go in and they give you food, and farmers give you the supplies. I think there's supply chains that just go. I assume the government probably has a big hand in running all that to make sure everybody has what they need to live on, but who knows?
Didn't feel clear in the Orville either. Thinking back.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, sorry.
They could spend hours and hours and hours just telling you how that system works to really get into it. Right. And that would be boring television. So. They mentioned the Prime Directive. The Chancellor asked her, "Are you just going to give us your technology?" And Picard's like, "No, that's super destructive." I was thinking about that because I would love some aliens to show up and give us faster than light space travel and the technology to fix climate change and medical technology to cure cancer. But where do you draw the line? If all of a sudden we had all the technology of the Enterprise, that includes weapons of war and stuff. And if your society's not ready for that, that could be real dangerous.
I feel like an idiot because I can't remember the title of the episode.
Star Trek.
No, Twilight Zone episode. The aliens come and they do that kind of stuff. They fix everything. They solve all the problems. And they're like, "Hey, and you should come to our world and check it out." And it's a cookbook.
Oh, that one.
So to serve man. How could I?
I never saw that one. I just saw the Simpsons reference to it, of course.
But that's what happens in that one. They solve all our problems so they can fatten us up so they can eat us. Which I don't know. That might not be the worst trade-off.
So in my notes, we're up to the scene where Riker wants to escape, and he's talking to Linnell, played by Bebe Neuwirth, who I knew ahead of time Bebe Neuwirth was in this, but I didn't recognize her in the moment. And I was like looking at IMDb, oh, which character was that? Apparently, she was a Trek fan. She wanted to be on the show. They wrote her this scene. They sent it to her, and they had to wait till she finished Cheers rehearsal for the day to come over to set and film it. But Bebe Neuwirth, famous for Cheers, Jumanji, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I really think more Tony Award-winning Broadway stuff too, right? Not just the movies.
Yeah,
and
I
Secretary.
One of the guys, I think it was this episode, he he was on Cheers a few months after this. So, yeah.
I really enjoyed that scene because, first of all, Bebe Neuwirth's great. And I very much identified with her character. I want to sleep with an alien. Yes, I get that. What was surprising to me about that was that I wrote down at the beginning of this that she wants to sleep with him just for the first few lines, even though it wasn't obvious yet. And then she's like, no, I want to sleep with you. And I'm like, oh, they're saying the subtext out loud. Okay. But the fact that then he did it and then really was like blowing her off too, where she's like, will I see you again? Yeah, I'm busy.
Did you say he did do it or did not?
No, he definitely slept with her.
He did.
Oh,
he definitely slept with her.
I must have been taking notes or something. I'm completely missed that that actually happened.
We didn't see it happen, but she said, that's the only way I'm helping you. And the next scene, she comes out and she's kind of like primping a little bit. And he's looking at her like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that.
Okay. Interesting.
And there are so many different, I can't decide which illusion or whatever classic trope or fallacy or whatever to go to. Because, I've argued Kirk has banged his way out of dangerous situations before because he's had to. And I think Riker more than Kirk is one who's like, not only am I willing to do it, I'm so excited that I can make this happen. Now he changes his mind here for whatever reason, and maybe it's because he's hurt and all that stuff. And he's just like, I just gotta get out of here. Which it's a different kind of. I'm on an alien world, and I met a honey. This is more of a, oh God, it's more of a.
I think a big part of the problem may be that she's like forcing him, like saying you have to do this. Right. Because if there's one thing about Riker, and they talk about this on the Greatest Gem podcast all the time too, not to send you to another podcast, but his
on my way.
His philosophy seems to be aggressive consent. Like he is not trying to seduce anybody that doesn't want it, unlike Kirk.
Right.
And if I could easily see that going totally against his personality, if she comes on real strong as like, you have to sleep with me or I'm not helping you. Like that automatically, he may have been interested until she said that. And I was like, oh God, no.
Well, and I don't think Kirk ever slept with an alien where the stakes were that spelled out that blatantly that,
right.
You can escape if you have sex with me. And then in my mind, I thought of how many times we've seen science fiction or otherwise, where it's the guy who's like, well, you can get out of here, but you have to. You actually, now we're talking real world and the dramatic world. You can get A, but I'm going to need this from you. And it got me to thinking, well, okay, so should we be creeped out by this? I thought it was a funny scene. I thought it was fun. They played it fun. She was great all the way through the, like you said, Jimmy, when he's like, or maybe she says, I'll call you. And then she does the gas, like, oh, I'm going to miss him so much or whatever. So, maybe we do more for them than they do for us. But of course, he's from advanced civilization.
Well, the other part of that dynamic, though, is she really just seemed to be wanting to check the box. It had nothing to do with Riker himself. She just wanted to sleep with an alien.
So maybe she had a change of heart, too. She went from, I just want to have sex to, oh, man, that was really good sex. And it's too bad.
I mean, her people they have the webbed hands.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they're as dexterous as our hands.
Yeah. That's just me with my loose-fingered bias thinking, well, they must have found a way around having their hands all together. But I'm sure the Penguin and people like that do find ways to make it work. But yeah.
Life finds a way.
That's
Sorry.
but anyway, yeah. I mean, I think there is a place where you could take that, like, again, if it was the other way around and it was Troy and the I don't care. I don't know. Come up
Mr.
with
Frolla.
Well, we're
now we're definitely creepy.
you're referring to the way that we think about things on Earth because it's a very patriarchal society,
Right.
It's the whole sexual currency thing that we have set up. It gets creepier whenever you have men doing the demanding in that way, and we get around that, I think, to make it comical or make it. And this is, I guess, like the male gaze feminism that might come up at some point. The idea of this woman is empowered because she's now in a position to do this thing that men would be like, oh, like the whole, teachers sleeping with students thing. The double standards there. The female teacher.
I feel like we're going to talk more about sex in the workplace next week, but
maybe.
Yes, we are. That one. But yeah, I think Keith, I think you're kind of getting to the overall with this, and I know I'm building up this big thing, but it was a great scene. There are so many layers here that take it out of that realm of just that power dynamic. He's a big guy. She's a tiny woman. The alien thing, and then
also Bebe Neuwirth super attractive. What if she wasn't? What if this was a very unattractive person?
And that's another dynamic too.
Or at least not attractive by human standards. I mean, they do enough to show that maybe there are similar kinds of aesthetics, but by the way they look humanoid and so on. What I was going to say is also we're going on Riker's reputation. We're assuming that that they have this pretext here of him being injured and urgently needing to get out of there, that to make it seem like, well, ordinarily, he probably would want to anyway, so whatever. So we don't feel too bad for him, but still, he's not in good shape there, and it's probably informing a lot of his hesitancy.
Well, that's not very professional, but the head of the hospital, Dr. Burrell, played by George Hearn, is super professional because he even has taken the same human oath of to do no harm. You may recognize George Hearn, though, from Sweeney Todd, the 1982 version, Sneakers, Sweeney Todd, the 2001 version, The Devil's Own, and a whole host of other things. I mean, it's only 56 credits, but
he might have been the one who made it onto Cheers.
What?
But yeah, I thought that was a good moment too when he's like, "Hey, they're strong on the Hippocratic Oath on this, or whatever they call it on this planet."
Well, I just wrote in before you said that. I just wrote in space Hippocratic Oath. I wish he had said that.
He is, but Dr. Neuwirth, played by Steven Anderson, is not, because he leads a mob to beat Riker up in the hallway.
Wait, so that was a doctor who did that?
Yeah, and he's best known for Halloween 5 and this role, as well as The X-Files and What a Girl Wants, and did a handful of episodes of Boston Legal. But yeah, I don't know why this is what he's best known for, but if you're going to play somebody that jerky. And then the other doctor, the female, who was Dr. Tava, was played by Sachi Parker, best known for Scrooged, Peggy Sue Got Married, Back to the Future, and only 25 credits, but those are some big top-line credits.
Yeah.
But still, it's only 25.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
important. Wait at the bar.
About the Linnell thing, there was something else I had written down that I wanted to mention, and it was funny to me that somehow Riker still made the truth sound like a lie when he was talking to her. It just sounded like a pickup line he was using. Yeah, my spaceship. I'm doing this. It was so weird. I think it played out well and comically though. Just somehow that feel.
Yeah.
It almost ties into what you were saying before at the beginning, how you didn't feel like you believed that they should have bought what he was saying. But
Jonathan Frakes playing not interested in a woman is comedy gold.
True.
I thought you were about to say Emmy worthy or something.
And almost as unbelievable as if Shatner did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost as in like a football field worth of almost.
And speaking of Star Trek 4 and Chekhov in the hospital, Chekhov's phaser comes back when Riker is confronted by Minister Krolla, who tries to get him to shoot. Although Riker manages to get it turned to stun first. I was like, it's Chekhov's phaser.
Yep.
I actually thought Chekhov from TOS.
Yeah, that's
just for a second ago.
That was on purpose.
Okay.
Because he was the patient in Star Trek 4.
I thought, and I got real
my God.
confused when Corolla shot the IV stand or whatever, and then I was like, because I wrote down, I was like, what is with this crappy phaser they're using? And it's like, oh, it's on stun. That makes total sense.
Yeah. And of course he'd keep it on stun. But then when they beamed him up, because Crusher's like, no, we need to see him in sickbay, I'm like, oh, maybe it wasn't stun. But then she's like, no, he's fine. So I feel like just in the moment, they're like, let's get him out of here. We can't keep the situation under control in this room. So let's take everybody up where we have control of the situation.
Yeah.
You think she was exaggerating the injury?
Yes. I think she wanted to get these people out of there and then deal with it later.
Yeah.
I mean, Riker just got beat up. Well, she doesn't know that yet, but she knows Riker's in bad shape.
She did that analysis, which I think was kind of convenient about the blast angle and so on. Is that what you're about to talk about?
It was. No, I was moving on.
Oh, I thought, well, all right. Part of that is just, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here. So they beamed everybody aboard, and they revealed to the alien planet that this was an act of martyrdom. She said that they could tell by the blast angle that his left hand was on the phaser. That being Corolla, was that his name?
Yes.
Corolla,
Yeah. Corolla's left hand was on the phaser when it went off, and they immediately, within seconds, understood he was trying to martyr himself, like his other people. So,
which
I liked not drawing out the stress of that, but it did feel a little.
Well, it's Yale that makes the conclusion of the martyr.
Yeah, that's my point. It was so just and fine. That removed a lot of the unnecessary stress, because I hate when they do things like that.
And the forensics lab confirmed all of that.
Yeah. I just thought, well, they're dealing with the smartest people on the planet. They're going to understand things like that without making too big a fuss.
Yeah. And so is the lesson here that suicide, you'll get rewarded if you try to kill yourself, but don't?
The lesson here is that suicide is painless, but if you miss, it's not.
But what do you think about her analysis? Do you think that should have been possible for her to do with whatever? She just said like the angle of the blast or something. And
I would think so. I mean, we already have forensics that can determine angle and distance and all that. I would think that Crusher could do it too.
I think she knew he was crazy enough, or not crazy enough, but committed crazy. That's another conversation to have. But
he thought he was saving his planet.
Yeah. And I think that's another one to talk about, which is, and again, this is said 91, but he talks about this is going to be an end to our way of life, which is something we've heard a lot in the last 4 years here as well.
Sure.
We're worried about an end to our way of life. And I think in that time, we heard that too, regardless of what it was. And I think that's always the response from, for lack of a better term, I'll say conservative progressive, but whether it's the people who are wanting to stay where we are and the people who want to change things. Sure. And that can be, either side can be the good or the bad in this instance. But, I'm progressive. I tend to think that we want to move forward. I think that's always the argument. So in my, the end to our way of life thing made me think, ooh, I don't like that argument. And I think that's always a way to stop change. And it's been used a lot to stop positive change and continues to be used to positive change. So to me, it jumped from even more of a interplanetary thing to more of a political thing, and people can't handle this, so we're going to have to wait. And it's like, okay, but there's all these people, and in this instance, there weren't people suffering per se,
right?
That we could see.
Right, exactly. We just saw the. If
you like your xenophobia, you can keep it.
Right.
So
which parlance also dovetails into the chance to make the right decision.
That's where I'm up to as well.
Yeah.
What a wise leader, though, to fully consider the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because as much as I just said, I would probably still end up going with let's make that jump, and the people that get it will get it, and it'll be great. But it's easy for me to say. It could also notice people's brains, but
he had a focus on education and societal change in that regard, so it would be less violent when it happens, which we could really use some education to beat out some of this racism and bigotry.
Well, and I thought that was actually good on his side of the ledger, because I thought he was going to say, well, we need to defend the borders or whatever, this or that. But it sounded like, it didn't sound like this wasn't a planet, as far as we knew, in a civil war. But yeah. So,
also the ending of, we need to delay this, but I hope we can still do this in our lifetimes. I want to see you again. He wants to make that contact. They're just not ready, so he's going to do whatever he can to get them ready, which was they definitely elected the right person. If Chancellor Trump were in charge of this planet, it would be a much different ending. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think if he'd gone with, yeah, come on down, let's do this, I was supportive of that notion and where Yale was coming from.
Yeah.
But I did right. Now I know why aliens advanced. I'm always ragging on these advanced beings in these episodes. I'm always looking down on us. In this episode, I was like, you know what? They might have a point.
Yeah.
We're too stupid. Yeah. We'll come back later. So for once, that point was made to me.
The last note I had was about the design of the matte painting that we get to see.
Oh, yeah.
I liked the look of it, but man, there were no windows from the middle of the building down. Yeah. There's a lot of basement that's above ground. They need more windows in their society.
We didn't get a lot into what happened on that planet, really, did we?
No, not really.
Yeah, so we didn't know what they do there, because we know it has to be everybody on that planet does. But no, I'm kidding about that. But I got the feeling that it was a more M-like, Earth-like planet than we're used to, other than the Los, as you call them.
Except that they had one chancellor for the entire planet, which is interesting.
Just wait, Keith. It's happening. That's what's going on.
Yeah, we got the head of the United Nations. Now, I think making the planet as Earth-like as possible was smart, because it really helps hammer home the points they're trying to make. We can relate to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Where if they're strange aliens, it would not be. Yeah.
I thought so too. I agree. Krolla says, and he might have said it a couple times, but he definitely said it, I mean no disrespect. Anytime someone begins a conversation with, I mean no disrespect is coming at you. That's what's going to happen. It's just like when someone's like, I don't want to sound like an a-hole. You got to say something that makes you sound like an a-hole. So I found that amusing. And I do appreciate that he was a little bit more layered than just the villain, the obvious villain, even though it did kind of come across that way. We alluded to this earlier, but when they say no mission more dangerous than first contact, and that makes so much sense. And I mean, obviously, even this little thing was fraught with peril. And again, I think that again points to they've come a long way, but also to why Kirk and that Enterprise are so legendary. Not only because he beat the Gorn, but I think, which was a first contact, but I think it was two first contacts. What are two? If you get two first contacts, is that a double play? What is that? Anyway,
you get 5 and the 6th one's free if you have the
yeah, I was going there. Good job. But it's so true, and I love it just because it's like, oh, by the way, we're going to tell you what this show's been about for all these years, just in a little different way. It's like, oh, that makes so much sense. My last one is, and we've kind of talked around this, is the idea of them being spies versus observers. And this goes back to first contact. It's like,
and the duck blind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The duck blind. Yeah. So in my mind, I think I'm like Neri in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Tell me everything. Please save our planet. And then you can eat me when you're done 40 years from now, or not, whatever. Yeah. Tick, tick, tick. However many years from now when I'm done, fry me up and eat me, please. Make me the daily special. But I don't know that I would actually react that way, especially depending on how they looked.
Yeah.
If they look like Bebe Neuwirth, yeah, I'm like, hey, there's got to be nothing wrong with these guys. If they look like Tin Woodman, I don't know. They'd be really big. But anyway, so yeah, I thought that parallel was interesting.
My alternate episode was Bebe Neuwirth shows back up at the end and she's pregnant with Riker's baby.
Ah, that's a good one.
Yale. I think that the way he presented himself at the end, you touched on it. The fact that he mentioned education as
Chancellor Durkin. You said Yale. Did you mean Chancellor Durkin?
Yes. Wait, who's Yale?
Marasta Yale was the female scientist.
Okay. I thought you were saying that the chancellor's name was Yale. Sorry, yeah, the chancellor.
No, and her colleague was named Harvard.
Sigh. Yeah, the fact that he brought up education sort of saved what he was doing. It kept him from seeming as like it was just my friend got hurt. Let's be xenophobic about it. Let's just give up.
I
know. I'm saying that they were careful to lead the conversation that direction by mentioning that he had another plan, or at least he was planning to actually take steps toward getting there, as opposed to just saying we're closing things up for good. We don't want anything to do with anybody ever.
Yeah.
But did Corolla really change anything?
I mean, so you could argue that Corolla succeeded because he got what he wanted and left. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think the Chancellor Durkin was trying to convince us that Corolla was changeable, and so was everybody else. It just takes time, and you can't rush him into it.
See, I don't know if he got what he wanted exactly. He didn't want things to change right away, but he's assuming that the Chancellor succeeds. He won't actually be able to be a martyr and fire people up to the point where they're actually going to be like militant on a planetary scale, or hostile towards all aliens, and kicking off a Star Wars defense program or something. I'm sure that's what they would call it.
Well, I don't know that that's what he wanted. There was never talked, I thought, about him wanting to like wage war with the galaxy. It was more just he was scared of the unknown. And the way Durkin talked, I felt like, he likes Corolla for a reason. He probably thinks he can change Corolla's mind given enough time. So to me, I was like, okay, maybe Corolla's not single-minded. Maybe this was his knee-jerk reaction and he just needs time to get used to it too. I don't know. He wasn't totally villain, in my opinion.
Yeah, as soon as he said he was Minister of Security, I got more suspicious.
Of course.
Like Keith was thinking.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're aggressively wanting to invade the universe or the galaxy. What I mean is there's similar storylines in like the Justice League cartoon. They have the military guy in America who essentially wants to put a safety net around the world. That thing, the same thing that Iron Man said at some point, but not in the sense of aggressively going out, but more proactively in his mind protecting them from anyone ever getting in, which isn't necessarily healthy either. But yeah, just it's sort of like a scorch everybody who comes through the field kind of approach.
Any alternate episodes?
Just the Alien ER.
Okay.
Just the opening, just the action movie opening.
Nice.
They're there to just kick all alien butt on the planet,
I did think it was going to be something like that when he's like, I didn't think, or whatever he said. I thought it was going to be something along those lines, but it was not. What a so good episode.
Who was your annoyance of the week?
Corolla.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
You should have been a Camry instead.
Keith, are you going with Corolla as well?
Yeah.
I wrote his name down 4 different ways, and one of them was like a Toyota.
Crush of the week.
Bebe.
Me too. Linnell all the way.
I don't remember all my picks for every season, but I feel like this might be my most fickle of all. But yeah,
I mean, I identified a lot with the character of Linnell anyway, so
yeah,
and I think her and I would, especially I'm an alien. I think we have adventurous personalities in that arena, and we'd have a good time together. So, Keith,
I have to preface this as I did recently, which is just I always feel like I'm betraying myself somehow if I go for like the obvious kind of pick, like Linnell. But at the same time, this is the funny part of that. When I was watching this, I was going, she's got like a Bebe Neuwirth vibe. I was like, it's hard to resist that because it's hard not to have a crush on Bebe Neuwirth and there were various characters, especially Lilith. And so I was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, wait, that has to be her. So
I thought you were going to go Yale, but I'm glad to hear that even you are not immune to Bebe Neuwirth's charms.
Yeah. I really liked Yale. I liked the character.
In this episode, Yale would have been right up there.
Yeah.
Ranking the episode. Oh, where to start?
All the way to the bottom.
No, let's start in the middle. Devil's Due. Another strong female guest star recently. Better or worse than Devil's Due?
That's
Ooh.
tough. This doesn't have the flash, the same kind of,
Uh-huh.
circusry going on there. Circusry.
But a lot more to think about.
That's not a word.
Yeah, I think I go above. As much fun as that episode was. We had some fun here.
Yeah. More substance, I guess, which is it's not so far above. Beyond like the idea of taking over a planet with a con. So
Yeah. No, I'm with you guys. Unanimous. Let's go above. Above that is Brothers.
Man, I like lore too much. I think it's just.
I'd probably go above. So we're gonna leave it up to you, Jimmy.
Yay!
Woo! Oh God. I think Brothers is a more important episode of the franchise, but I think this one was a little better put together.
Yeah.
I could go either way. I really could. I will say above Brothers is Data's Day, and I would not go that high. The O'Brien wedding.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
So I think most people would put it below Brothers, but that's part of why I'm saying let's buck the trend and put it above Brothers.
Yeah, I was honestly closer to going either way. So
Let those other clown Star Trek rewatch podcasts deal on that. Just play by the numbers kind of stuff.
Next week, if you missed Geordi because he was credit only this week, we've got him back in a big way next week with the episode Galaxy's Child, which I don't know if you remember. Last week I was like, oh, don't worry, First Contact's going to be bad, but Galaxy's Child is great. Boy, was I wrong. I had that reverse.
What?
Geordi finally meets the real Dr. Leia Brahms. And a tragic another first contact, leaves the Enterprise with a gigantic galactic infant suckling the ship's energy, which really felt like Geordi A plot, the baby E or F plot. But we'll get to that. I'm giving away way too much. Next week, Galaxy's Child, Leah Brahms. Until then, live long.
On your dumb backward planet.
And don't jump the gun.
You jumped the gun by saying that, Keith.
That was perfectly timed. That was perfectly timed.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?